virtual YR event. I am Meredith Dolan, the chair of the Allegheny County Young Republicans, and also co-chair for the PA Young Republicans as well. We have three great candidates for the 28th district on here tonight to answer our questions. We have Libby Blackburn, Mike Heckmann, and Rob Mercuri. I'll give them the opportunity to introduce themselves and share about their backgrounds in a few moments. Couple things for tonight. First, we will be muting everyone to ensure there are no sound issues. So if you have an additional question, please use the chat feature and hopefully we'll have enough time. We'll also be rotating who answers each question first, so you'll get a chance to hear from all of the candidates. And then we are very fortunate to have Representative Natalie Mihalik join us this evening as our moderator. Natalie has been busy keeping Governor Wolf in check and working to represent her constituents in the 40th district. Not only is she a veteran and attorney, but she is also a working mother of 3 children. Rep. Mihalik has always been a champion of YRs, and I'm pleased to have her moderate and give us a quick update on what's happening in Harrisburg. Thanks, Natalie.
Thanks, Meredith, and thank you to you and the YRs for finding a creative solution to the political, I guess, difficulties right now with campaigning. It's certainly changed things for us politically, campaign-wise, and definitely legislative-wise too. And I won't take up, too much time here focusing on what's going on in Harrisburg. It'll become important for, one of you moving forward here. But I do think it's worth a mention, and then I'll circle back to this race in a moment here. But Meredith is exactly right. It's been the House Republican caucus that has led the way for some of these reopenings. Last week, we finally got a breakthrough with Governor Wolf making the announcement for construction and making the announcement for online auto sales. That was because of the continuous pressure that our caucus had been putting on the administration for the last several weeks. We finally saw a change in the way that the Department of Health was reporting some of the numbers, and they continue to adjust those. And that was because our House leadership was putting pressure on the administration and the health department officials to come clean with the information that they know, we know that they had, and it would help frame this virus and its effects in a way that was easier for the public to make some decisions for themselves. And it's going to be very important, I think, moving forward. This isn't something that's just going to affect us right now before you get into office. This is going to be for the long term. I mean, we're talking about 10 years to recover from this fiscally. So it's certainly going to play into a lot of decisions on down the line. I think politically speaking, it's definitely created a lot of challenges, but I think it's also created opportunity for you to show that you are creative and that you are a hard worker. I think those two qualities are really probably the two most important qualities, not only campaign side, but also once you get to Harrisburg, to sort of show the caucus and show your colleagues that you are willing to do the work. I think that carries you farther than really anything, than being the smartest person in the room. Hard work, there's not enough can be said about it. I myself survived a 3-way primary. And it might not work every time to have, just a clean race, but I do think it's worth noting that both of my previous primary opponents both circulated petitions for me this election cycle, because we were able to, sort of keep things clean. We were all coming from, the same place. We all wanted the same thing for different reasons. But I wanted to throw that out there. And again, it's not, some races carry different personalities, different challenges, but I do pride myself on the fact that I overcame that, and now we're friends and political allies, so to speak. I don't want to drone on because nobody's here to see me. Probably nobody knows what the 40th district is. If they've logged on to see the candidates in the 28th, and you certainly have some very large shoes to fill. Speaker Turzai has definitely, become a mentor of mine, but I'm excited to moderate tonight. I've never done this before, and I certainly have not done it in this format. So I think it'll be kind of fun. And I guess we'll just start with the questions, Meredith. Does that sound good? Or no, you want to do introductions first, right? Okay. And we'll start in alphabetical order here. So I first want to introduce Libby Blackburn. candidate for the 28th district. If you could take, what is it, 3 to 5 minutes for the introduction, and go ahead.
Thank you very much. And thank you to the Young Republicans for putting on this forum. My roots in this district run very, very deep. I have lived here for 50 years. It's been my home. I was a ministry leader in my church, a Republican committee member for the past 10 years. I am a lifelong Republican. I care about this district. We've chosen to raise our family in the very house that I grew up in. My sons went to the same elementary school and graduated from the same high school that I attended right here in the 28th. I've been an active member of that school board. I haven't been afraid to take a stand. I've year after year led the fight against raising taxes. For the past 7 years, I've voted no to tax raises. I am a fiscal conservative, and I've managed to keep a $150 million+ budget under control for 8 years on the school board. I really feel as though this is a position I'd love to have. I want to represent my community that I've cared about my whole life. Thank you.
Thank you, Libby. Next, if we could get your introduction from Mike Heckmann, candidate for the 28th.
Sure. Hello, I'm Mike Heckmann, and I'm grateful for this opportunity to speak with you about my background, to make my case as the best candidate in the selection, and to ask for your vote. I grew up in Ingomar, where my brothers and I were North Allegheny students from preschool through graduation in 2009. My father, Steve, was an NA teacher from 1979 to 2014, and my brother, Matt, is currently an NA teacher since 2014. I attended New York University's Stern School of Business, studying international public policy and economics, and then received my law degree from Vanderbilt Law School. I'm currently on leave from my work for the Pennsylvania House Republican Caucus, where my policy focuses have included education, redistricting, and the public pension crisis in particular. Though for the past year, I've been on leadership staff and have worked on some level with most of the topics that come before the House. I hope to offer my deep ties to this community, my direct experience with the policy challenges and opportunities facing Pennsylvania, and my relationships with most of the members and staff in the Capitol make me the best candidate, both to be Emily Skopov in November and to effectively represent our district as we transition from having the Speaker of the House to having a freshman legislator in Harrisburg.
Thanks, Mike. And last but not least, Rob Mercuri.
Thanks, Natalie, and thanks, Meredith, and for everybody for tuning in. Really excited to be here tonight, and glad to be with the Young Republicans again. And also kudos to Mike and Libby, and thanks for running a thus far a very collaborative and congenial campaign. And just like Natalie said, I think it's great that we're all pushing in the same direction. And one of us will get to replace Mike, who we all appreciate his legacy in this area. As for me, my roots in Western Pennsylvania are deep as well. Born and raised here, lifelong Western Pennsylvanian. I grew up and got an appointment to West Point and was able to serve my country for 5 years in uniform, 4 at the academy. So about a decade of my life was in uniform, and during the 9/11 period. And so right after graduation, I knew and my classmates knew that we were headed to war. So, the Young Republicans here, as you guys, a lot of you are either just out of college or still working your way through. As I was going through that phase of my life, I was leading a troop of men and women overseas to fight for the country. So that's my heritage, and that's kind of my starting point of my career. Western Pennsylvanian, joined the military, leadership education at West Point, but we wanted to come back. And after earning the Bronze Star in Iraq, doing my duty and serving the country, my wife and I, Kelsey, we wanted to raise our family in Western Pennsylvania, and we came back here in 2010, and we started our family here. And we have 3 kids in public school, and we're raising them with the values of this area. And it's our joy to teach them Western Pennsylvania values. And that's really what motivates me to be in this race. And they are big shoes to fill. You're right, Natalie. Speaker Turzai has done a phenomenal job for this area. And I look forward to following in those footsteps. We also are small business owners. And so we're stakeholders in this area in a different way, and kind of experiencing this crisis in a little bit of a different way too as small business owners. We can talk about that a little bit later. We own a UPS store in the Village of Pine. And then maybe the only other fact that's relevant for the group here is that I've had a career at PNC Bank and in financial services. So my economics background coming from West Point and my MBA from UMass served me well during the last crisis that we had, which was the financial crisis. I was actually over in Iraq looking for jobs in the Stars and Stripes newspaper and watching Lehman Brothers fail and watching the economy go into its last recession. So I was able to help pull us out by working in the risk department and the regulatory advisory departments of big banks and then PNC here in town. So I'll pause there and we'll continue the story as we go tonight, but great to be here. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks so much. I'm going to throw the first question here to Mike. How do you think the COVID-19 pandemic has changed priorities in Harrisburg, and how has it changed your own?
Sure. So it's certainly made our challenges a lot more immediate. When I began this campaign in February, I would talk to voters about the poor budgetary habits and mismanagement that were happening in Harrisburg, a lot of it coming from the governor. And the context was, we need to fix this while the economy is still great, so that we're prepared for the next downturn. Obviously now, despite how good the economy was just 2 months ago, we are in the next downturn, and it's not just a normal one. It's historic in its scale and in its speed, and we're not prepared, which is the sad truth for Pennsylvania. Last June, we had a reserve fund that could only run the state for a third of one day, compared to the national average of almost a month. And Natalie, thanks to you and other House Republicans, we put over $200 million into that reserve fund, but it's still one of the smallest in the country. And so for the next 18 months, especially this budget and next, we know there's going to be a lot of painful decisions. And I think we need to be honest with voters on that front. And we need to be prepared to communicate why we were so unprepared. Part of that was the pension crisis over the past 10 years, eating up just about every extra dollar we had to put into increased pension contributions. Another big factor was overspending by the governor. This year and last year he had a supplemental budget request for $800 million. And this year he was prepared for another. So we have to make sure our policy responses create prosperity rather than driving it away. We've already seen Governor Wolf's proposed path forward, and it's going to burden those small businesses that are already struggling with this crisis. So we need to ensure we hold the line on taxes and on those mandates on businesses, and prevent him from continuing to turn Pennsylvania into one of those high tax states in the Northeast that Americans flee from.
Thank you. Same question, I'll throw it to Rob. How do you think the COVID-19 pandemic has changed priorities in Harrisburg, and how has it changed your own?
Yeah, boy, what a year to be doing anything. What a year to be running for office for the first time. And for the nation and for the state, this is nothing short of a full-blown crisis. I mean, I think as we're stuck at home, sometimes it's easy to forget that, as families are educating their kids, or as long as you still have a job or connected, it feels like, we'll be through this in a few weeks or whatever. But I think if we look at the facts, this is a crisis that deserves a full court press, both nationally and at the state level. And it's going to take everybody pushing in the same direction. I think nationally, President Trump has led well. Halting international travel when he did, establishing CDC protocols with a very competent team was wise. The communication and the transparency that he's provided has been excellent. And I think what's shameful is when the other side decides to make it political and to try to bend the crisis for their own benefit. And I think let's all use this moment to get over that. We have to get through this together. and our very lives and our very livelihoods depend on it. This is not only a health crisis that every family with grandparents and seniors that they love should take extremely seriously. And I think we've done a good job, and we're at the point where we can see the curve flatten. And I think that's exciting news, and we should all be grateful for the leadership of the president, and I think our state leaders as well. Now, I think Governor Wolf has made a few key mistakes. I would have loved to have seen him sign Senate Bill 613. It was a very smart, well-written framework for us, if you haven't seen the bill or know about it, to get the economy moving again in a quick but thoughtful way. It didn't throw things back on, but it did provide a framework for the economy to get moving again. And we got to get the economy moving again. Natalie, I was thankful for your bill and your work to get the auto industry going again. And there's no reason that you can't do a car transaction in this time. You can do it over the phone. You can do it through the mail. You can do it through the essential businesses that are open. So we have to be more aggressive about that. And I think that was, looking backward, I think that'll prove itself out, that we shouldn't have waited as long as we are for some of these businesses to come back. If we wait too long, things won't come back. And that is a real thing that we have to be aware of. Also statewide, I think the Republican team deserves a lot of credit for, even though Senate Bill 613 didn't get passed, but clearly at that moment, it became a moment where the administration had to do something. And you saw him over the weekend, and this week, he came out with a framework. So if for nothing else, it was to push the governor to get the framework going. I support his red, yellow, and green framework. I think it makes sense. And I think, in terms of where we go next, my view is that that we should begin turning things on in a thoughtful manner so that we can all get back to work.
Thank you. Libby, I have the same question for you. How do you think COVID-19 has changed priorities in Harrisburg, and how has it changed yours?
Thank you very much. So we've got a lot of problems in Pennsylvania and the whole country and whole world right now. One of the biggest challenges is how we're going to weather the storm with unemployment compensation. We're going to have a lot of claims in unemployment right now, and we need to meet that need. And we also have to figure out how we're going to sensibly reopen businesses and begin operation again. My husband and I own a small business, and as we talked, I agree. The 613 was a bill that I wish would not have been vetoed, because I'm really fearful for a lot of our business owners. I think that some of them won't be able to come back, and somehow we're going to have to ensure that everyone's health remain safe. I like that we're wearing masks, but we've got to start reopening businesses. So I think that that's a major problem that the state is going to have to face. And then we're going to have a revenue problem, because without businesses being open, we aren't going to have the revenues from those businesses. So that's going to require a lot of tough decisions. As someone that has been in charge of a very large school district budget, I'm known for making the tough decisions. We're going to need somebody to go through the budget with a fine-tooth comb, and I'm not afraid to make decisions as your representative. I am not going to follow the Democrats' usual tax and spend. So I'd like to see us get back to opening up some businesses safely. And I think it's going to be important for everyone in Harrisburg to come up with the monies to pay the unemployment, and to maybe draw some lines, because we are going to have huge unemployment claims, and we need to ensure that people are able to reopen businesses and take care of the downturn in the revenue in Harrisburg. Thank you.
Thanks, Libby. I'm going to shift a little bit away from COVID-19. I'm sure we're all quite sick of it. What changes would you make to allow Pennsylvania to be more competitive in attracting new business to the state? Libby, I'm going to throw this one to you first.
So Pennsylvanians can't continue to just go with business as usual. You want to know what I think our biggest export is? I think our biggest export is all of our kids who are having to find jobs outside of Pennsylvania. I think we need to lower our taxes and have a sensible regulatory climate that will bring us economic growth. Those are the pro-growth policies that need to take place, and we need to have legislators rein in state spending in order to do that. Pennsylvania's had some problems in these areas, and we want to make Pennsylvania an attractive place for businesses. A long time ago, Pittsburgh in particular used to be a place where we had many, many corporate businesses headquarters, and we need to go back to that. I want to start lowering some taxes, getting businesses in the area, and having our kids remain here. I don't want to have to get on a plane to go see my grandchildren one day. So it's all about bringing economic growth to the area.
Thank you. Mike, same question for you. What changes would you make to allow Pennsylvania to be more competitive in attracting new business?
Sure. So, obviously we discuss having one of the highest corporate net income tax rates in the country. And in the long run, that's something that absolutely needs to change to attract businesses, to attract employers. I think less well known and well publicized is that we have just a nightmare of regulations, and in particular of permitting, especially from DEP. You have uncertainty in business and investment there where you don't even know what timeline you'll get an answer to your permit on. And then often the answer is no when it shouldn't be. So while we might have a lot of difficulty cutting taxes in the near future, given how deep this crisis is going to be, those are some non-budgetary ways. We can loosen regulations, we can repeal some that aren't serving well, and really take advantage of being a low-cost place to live and to employ someone relative to our peers, certainly to the east of the state. And Philadelphia is a little more expensive than Pennsylvania, or than Western Pennsylvania, but it's much less expensive than New York or than Washington. So we have some competitive advantages, and I think we need to be willing to find creative ways to take advantage of them. I agree with Libby. I'm of the age where I see my classmates and my friends deciding where they're going to build their lives and where their kids are going to grow up. And I know that my parents' generation, many of them didn't have a choice. Pittsburgh was shedding jobs, and it was shedding people because there was nowhere else to live or nowhere else to work after the steel mills closed. So I don't want to see that happen again for another generation. And I think we're in a good position that it won't be happening. But we need to continue to, resist attempts to make us more closely resemble New York or New Jersey, where, people are fleeing away from.
Thanks, Mike. Rob, same question for you. What changes would you make to allow Pennsylvania to be more competitive in attracting new business?
Yeah, thanks, Natalie. And I think this is one of my core issues in terms of growing the economic pie for this area and for this region. And I think that's how life gets better for all of us in this area. It's going to be increasingly important as we come back from this COVID crisis, that we are able to not only bring back what we had to the level that we had it, but also reignite the energy of innovation in our area. A couple things that Libby and Mike talked about that I agree with. Corporate tax reform is a priority for me. So we're at the highest rate in the country, believe it or not. We're at 9.9% for corporations in Pennsylvania. We need to lower that. We need to do it sooner than later. That'll be an investment. It'll have some cost for us up front, but I think if we lower that rate, and the other side of that is we need to be better about collecting, and we can do that if we lowered our rate from 9.9 to something in the 3 range. Maybe we match the personal income tax rate at 3.07. and we make sure that companies are paying that 3.07, then we'll be okay from a revenue standpoint. Companies spend a lot, and I've worked for PNC for a number of years. Companies spend a lot, have whole departments that work to minimize their corporate tax rate. And so if we streamline that, then and are just more upfront and simpler about how corporations pay their tax, then the revenues won't suffer, but we will have the attractiveness of being a low tax zone for companies that do want to plant headquarters here. Small businesses are important too. As a small business owner, again, we own the UPS store locally here. The unemployment tax is something that hits us hard. We have a higher unemployment tax than other states in other areas, and we need to address that. So I'd look at those two things as just incentives and drivers of helping businesses thrive in this area and being an attractive region economically. I think the other thing is our infrastructure needs to be looked at. I think Pennsylvania and its infrastructure is aging, and I think we need to be creative about maintaining and improving, but also plugging into some of the innovation that exists around the country and some of the good ideas that are coming out of different sectors. Things like the Hyperloop, which is kind of a new way for mass transit to happen. And there's talks about Pittsburgh, because of its location in the Midwest and its connectivity with other key cities like Columbus, Cleveland, Philly, even out to Chicago, that something like a mass transit system that connects those using new technology and innovative ideas can be a way to make people think about Pittsburgh again and get businesses coming out here and spending money, and get our kids to come back and live and plug into the economy. So infrastructure would be another one. I think innovation in general should be a focus. We could do more about attracting and incentivizing innovation. Small business people, young college people have great ideas, and we need to encourage those ideas, and we need to encourage them to put them in place in Pittsburgh, in district, in something like innovation loans that would be backed by Pennsylvania, where we say, bring us your ideas, try them, and a number of them will succeed, and that itself will be attractive to those young, energetic people. So I think we can do more in the innovation space. And then finally, I think deregulation. So Libby and Mike, you touched on it a little bit. I think Pennsylvania needs to deregulate. I was in the banking industry and got to see firsthand how negative over-regulation can be on an entire industry. And it can suffocate creative capital because you've got to fight through that red tape. Or maybe it's not even something that young people try because of all those red tape steps that they have to take. So deregulating is something that I think should be a top priority. So those are the four that I would focus on from a corporate tax perspective: infrastructure improvements, incentivizing innovation, and deregulating.
Thanks, Rob. The next question I have, it's certainly something that I am passionate about, was before, and definitely am now in the State House. What is your stance on liquor privatization? Would you work to broaden the locations of where liquor, beer, and wine can be sold? Rob, I'm going to let you take this one first.
Yeah, thanks, Natalie. I think liquor privatization is something that we should absolutely do. I'm a big fan of fully privatizing the sale of liquor. I think the state has been involved for too long in the sale of liquor, and that it's been something that has been run inefficiently. We need to modernize the restrictions. So when I go to Giant Eagle, which I couldn't go there 5 years ago and buy wine or beer, but thanks to Speaker Turzai in the House, I can now go to Giant Eagle and pick up a 6-pack. But if I want more than 12 bottles, I've got to come back another time. I don't see why that's the case, right? As a responsible adult, I think I should be able to go in and pick up what I need that day. So I think there's some deregulating that we can do there to modernize those restrictions. I'd love to see that privatization as well. And I think that the other thing that we need to consider anytime we're talking about alcohol or any drug issues, is that we also need to continue to fully fund education about the dangers of drug and alcohol usage, as well as our state social services for those who are addicted to alcohol or for those who are addicted to substances. It's very important anytime we talk about the topic of alcohol or, again, drugs, that we're talking about those who have a problem. It's just like, talking about our casinos. It's important to understand that some people have issues. Most people don't, but I'm a big fan of, and I think it's really a priority to make sure we're caring for those who have issues with the substance. So that's where I'm at.
Thank you. Libby, what is your stance on liquor privatization? Would you work to broaden the locations of where liquor, beer, and wine can be sold?
Thank you, Natalie. The jury is back in. After reforms of the last several years, we all know that free enterprise works. I am very much in favor of what we've done. I support continued efforts to expand choices for consumers. State store monopolies are inefficient and outdated. Free enterprise does work, and it is the competition and convenience are perfectly compatible with public safety and limiting underage drinking. So I am very much in favor of the liquor privatization.
Thank you. Mike, same question for you. What is your stance on liquor privatization? Would you work to broaden the locations of where liquor, beer, and wine can be sold?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it feels a bit ridiculous in 2020 that we have a state liquor monopoly, that we can shut all the stores down and people have to do bootleg runs across state lines during, a pandemic. And I know we said I agree with Rob in general, we shouldn't be politicizing the crisis, but maybe this is one place where it's showing us what wasn't working and what shouldn't have been our system, which is a state liquor monopoly. I think you probably have more attention on that than you've ever had now. And it would be a good time to bring, from a grassroots level, to bring attention to and to bring a push for a change to overcome the resistance we know is going to come from certain sectors. And now, I'm happy with the reforms we've made, but we've probably created some new resistance because now Giant Eagle and others have invested in their separate entrances and their cafes, and they may not want to, open up the floodgates to new competitors. So I think we should push forward. I think we should push forward in a very deliberate way, knowing that there are businesses, some of them are small and medium-sized businesses that are invested in certainly the beer system. As we broaden that, we're going to be impacting small businesses, medium businesses that have paid a lot of money to the state for their particular permit. And I think we need to be cognizant of the impact that has. But absolutely, you compare us to most of the states in the country, and it just doesn't seem like you're living in 2020 when this is the system you have. So,
thank you. Mike, this is going to be for you. What can you do as a state representative to protect the Second Amendment rights of the residents of the 28th District?
Sure. So, to be frank about that, I think that what we need to be clearer about positioning ourselves as the party of pragmatism on guns. We're not the absolutists. We're not, trying to, I think the Democratic Party is very clear. If they had their way, we would have an Australia type gun buyback. We'd turn into Japan, where there are few to no private gun owners. I don't think we can be absolutist about it. And I think if we are, we lose voters in places like the 28th District if we're unwilling to take some deliberate steps to reduce gun violence, and particularly to reduce mass gun violence and school shootings. Things like keeping guns out of the hands of criminals and mentally ill people and many teenagers who just aren't fully developed and with their decision-making abilities yet. So I think, while we defend the right that the Supreme Court recognized in Heller, that is an individual right to own arms and to bear arms, we also have to be pragmatic and look for ways that we can reduce gun violence, because it is a clear and pressing and very fair concern of a lot of people. And so I think it behooves us as Republicans to take that reasonable and pragmatic approach rather than to appear to be absolutist as many Democrats are.
Thank you, Mike. Rob, this will go to you. What can you do as a state representative to protect the Second Amendment rights of residents in the 28th District?
Yeah, I mean, Natalie, pure and simple, I think to protect our Second Amendment rights, we need to prohibit new gun restrictions and new gun laws. I think there are plenty of responsible and reasonable gun laws on the books, and I would not be in favor of increasing those laws to further restrict people's Second Amendment rights and the exercise thereof. I think there are clear advocacy groups on both sides of this issue. And I think, Mike, one of the points that you made that I agree with is that, there's a responsible middle that people of both sides agree on. And I think as a party, we need to embrace that middle. But I think with a caveat, Mike, where I would differ with you is that I would not look for more restrictions. And I do not think that the gun restrictions are what reduces crime or protects us. I actually think that family advocacy and mental health advocacy are the answers to those social ills. We go to a large church in the district, Northway Christian Community, and before COVID, we used to gather with hundreds and hundreds of people on a Sunday morning. Our safety team, because of Pennsylvania's laws, is able to arm themselves. And there was a church shooting in Texas where that came in really, really handy. And they were able to stop gun violence right where it started by using what they were armed with to protect themselves. And so I think, there's arguments on both sides and we could go around and around in a circle about it. But I think we all have to take responsibility for our families and the way that we encourage young people to promote mental health and so that they know where to go when they have an issue and that they don't lash out. But for more gun laws to be the answer, I'm not for that. So as a state rep, just to come back to it, Natalie, what I would do is I would stand in the gap for our Second Amendment and make sure that I was known as somebody who was pro-Second Amendment and would not pass further restrictions on gun rights.
Thanks, Rob. And Libby, for you, same question. What can you do as a state representative to protect the Second Amendment rights for the residents of the 28th District?
So both the federal and state constitutions guarantee these rights. You have a right to gun ownership. I would not limit any freedom to responsible gun owners, and I would oppose any effort to limit their freedom to own a gun. It's plain and simple. We all know in this world that criminals will find access, and I don't think that legislators trying to put together some type of a bill to limit freedoms that were given in our Constitution are going to help us alleviate crimes. So I would do nothing to change the current Constitution, and furthermore, I would oppose people in any efforts to limit responsible gun owners from having access to guns. It's part of our Second Amendment rights.
Thanks, Libby. A little lighter question here, and you'll be up first here, Libby. What is something interesting that you have learned about the 28th District since you started your campaign?
So, I've actually lived in the 28th District my entire life. So I have to say that I really feel that I know it well after being here for 50 years. But the one thing that I've been reminded of as never before is the extraordinary commitment that our community of men and women have given to this district. My faith has been really, I just feel as though we've done a great job here. Yesterday, I was part of a group. I went with a North Allegheny basketball team to the food bank, and here I thought I had this huge box of goods that I was going to donate. And what was great is that they actually had entire carfuls, and it made my, what I thought was a very large box actually look sort of small. You know, I was told that this team donated over $7,000 worth of goods, and so it makes you feel so great about the district. It makes you feel so great about the men and women here, and it sort of restores any problems in faith anyone might have, which I haven't had. I've been here my whole life. I could live anywhere I wanted, and I chose to live here. I chose to raise my family here. I love the 28th district. That's why I want to represent the 28th district. But it's been wonderful to see people step up to the plate and help other people. I see people donating masks. I see people donating food. We're trying to help each other. And it makes me very proud of the 28th district. Thank you.
Thank you. Same question for you, Mike. What is something you've learned about the 28th district since you started your campaign?
Yeah, so similar to Libby, you know, having grown up here, I felt really well-versed and knowledgeable about it. And, you know, to be honest, the most encouraging thing has been, we all know this is an exceptional place to live and to grow up and to have your family. But it's shown itself to me as exceptional in another way, which is in this era of really hyper-partisanship and just often very nasty political discourse. It's been very encouraging to be communicating with voters, and really that behavior is such a small exception in Wexford. Most people that I've spoken to are thoughtful. They may agree or disagree. They may be committed Democrats, but there's much less reflexive taking of sides and much less political nastiness. And that's really a great compliment to our community. And it also makes it a lot more enjoyable as a candidate. At the same time, it's also a challenge. Voters here are more thoughtful and they're less reflexive on which side they're on. So you have to really engage them and put your best arguments forward and win their vote, not just rely on them to pick you based on a surface level of agreement or disagreement. So I've really enjoyed that challenge, and it's one I look forward to continuing to excel at through November and once in office.
Thanks, Mike. Same question for you, Rob. What is something you've learned about the 28th district since you started your campaign?
Yeah, it's a great question. And this time is such an interesting time to be running, as we talked about. And the 28th district is really shining, in my view, through this time. We've seen so many friends and neighbors come together in partnership. We have a gentleman who comes to our UPS store who is making masks out of his basement using a 3D printer. And he's doing it by the thousands at his own cost. And it's awesome to see the power of and the humanity of people. Democracy is a beautiful thing. We are so lucky to live in this country. And as candidates, at least I'll speak for myself, as a candidate, I feel lucky and privileged to be able to participate in the democratic process the way I am this year. And, you know, just like Libby and Mike have said, people have been wonderful as we've gone around door to door, or as we've talked on the phone since the restrictions have been in place. People are encouraging, and I'm encouraged as a resident of the district about the humanity of the district. And that's part of why I'm running, is to help raise the dialogue of the political conversation and to get to problem solving and solutions. And I love to see the power of people. Every time they volunteer or join the campaign, we get to work together, not just the campaign, but also to talk about the issues and to advocate for this area. And how do we keep it great, and how do we move it forward?
Thank you. This is a wordy one, so pay attention. Looking at Speaker Turzai's 2018 election results, McCann lists in some areas of Franklin Park are going to be a competitive battleground with Emily Skopov. How do you plan to address the swing vote in this demographic? And how will you ensure a win in November? Rob, this will go to you first.
Yeah, it's a great question. So in our district, McCandless and Franklin Park are keys. And for the young Republicans who aren't in a part of our district, we also have Bradford Woods, Pine Township, and Marshall Township. And across those 5 townships, you have many different socioeconomic factors and thousands of families, 65-ish thousand people. And McCandless and Franklin Park are unique in that they did more closely go to Mike Turzai in the last election, and I think Emily Skopov had some traction in those areas. And I think sometimes the Democratic arguments and the momentum that they had in that last election in 2018 did carry some weight. I think we need the right candidate. I think when that right candidate establishes credibility and casts a vision for the area and can talk in intelligent and meaningful terms about their background and experience, their credentials, how they will bring those credentials. In my case, I would advocate for my background and say, I'm a military veteran, I'm an economics expert who worked in banking, and I can help us lead through this crisis and talk to voters in those districts. And I think the vision and the strength of your vision is what appeals to voters across the aisle. We have some Skopov friends in our district, and so we get to see signs for Emily Skopov right next to mine in different houses. And we stop by and talk to those folks. And I know that we leave an impression every time we do that. So I think it's establishing credibility, increasing name identification, because she has that, which none of us do yet at that level. She's still got the name ID, so we're working on that. Mike Turzai didn't have to worry about that because he had a 20-year track record and a lot of success. But I think if we execute a grassroots campaign and establish a core group of volunteers that across the 5 townships pull together, and it's not about one township versus the other, it's about all the townships together in the district, uniting behind the right candidate and pushing forward to keep this district Republican. And it's so important that we do that. And I think that has to be our single-minded focus, more than school district versus school district or township versus township. It has to be District 28 united together to keep us Republican. And I want to go further than that. I want to say, hey, let's join hands with districts where Frank Dermody is the representative. And let's work with Carrie Del Rosso and get her elected and flip District 33 to be Republican. Let's take ground in 2020. And President Trump's coattails will help this year, and up ballot with Sean Parnell will help as well. And I think we can do it. So that's my strategy, Natalie.
Thank you so much. Libby, looking at Speaker Turzai's 2018 election results, McCandless and some areas of Franklin Park are going to be a competitive battleground with Emily Skopov. How do you plan to address the swing vote in this demographic? And how will you ensure a win in November?
Thank you, Natalie. I have already been endorsed by both the McCandless and Franklin Park Republican committees. I am a person who has already run in 3 elections that contain those areas. North Allegheny makes up over 80% of the 28th district. And I have won 3 elections for all of North Allegheny when I ran for school board. So I do have the confidence of the voters already because I won every time I ran. And frankly, I received the most votes out of everyone just in the previous election. So I will say that Democrats, Republicans, and independents have all voted for me overwhelmingly. I think that I'll be a strong and effective voice in Harrisburg for our community. And most of the people in over 80% have seen my votes. They have trust in me. It doesn't matter whether you're a Republican, a Democrat, or an independent. If you make wise decisions, people are behind you, and people in those areas strongly have voted for me in previous elections. So I'm actually feel quite confident that I will do well. If I win this primary in the general election, they will vote for me. They voted for me previously, and everything I've done has just made them realize that I'm that much stronger of a candidate for them in Harrisburg, and that I have the views that they want and will fight for those beliefs. Thank you.
Thanks, Libby. Mike, looking at Speaker Turzai's 2018 election results, McCandless and some areas of Franklin Park are going to be a competitive battleground with Emily Skopov. How do you plan to address the swing vote in this demographic? How will you ensure a win in November?
Sure. So I think I have a few competitive advantages there. I agree with Rob that it's going to be very important to be able to, put forth your knowledge base, to talk about the policies, to put out a vision for the district and for Pennsylvania. And I'm obviously going to benefit on that front from my work in the Capitol, having worked in particular on education policy, on redistricting, on public pensions, which are certainly three of the most hot button issues, not just in this district, but statewide. I also have, some fortunate advantages from my personal background. As Libby said, she's been very involved in NA. My brothers and I grew up and attended NA. We're quadruplets. That was, tough for people to miss. So getting some of that name recognition to compete with Emily Skopov will help with that. There's also been a Mr. Heckmann teaching at North Allegheny since 1979. And so as far as name recognition and community ties, throughout this district, I think that that's been very effective and very helpful for us so far in the campaign, and it will pay off in June and in November. Another factor here is my age. Many of those people who are the swing voters, who are the Democratic voters, who are making competitive in McCandless and Franklin Park, they're in their late 20s, early 30s. They're moving back to the district, having grown up here and left for college, and they're buying their first home, they're having their first child. And those are my classmates and my peers. And so I know some of us were on with Majority Leader Cutler last night, and he mentioned that as Republicans, we face a number of false preconceived notions. And one of those is that, nobody under 30 is a Republican. And so as those voters under 30 or around 30 are looking at the candidates, I think it will help me to be one of their peers and to, reassure them that I have their concerns in mind as I bring their voice to Harrisburg in a way that Emily Skopov really can't.
Thanks, Mike. This next question is going to go to you first.
Okay.
What has your campaign done to transition to these unprecedented times of social distancing?
Yeah, so obviously it's been challenging. Pretty much every traditional form of campaigning is suspended, but we're fortunate to live in maybe the golden age of a lot of new forms of campaigning. And I think because of this crisis, people are also paying a lot more close attention to public policy, to their elected leaders, to the choices we're going to have to make in November. So I think we have people's attention, even if we can't knock on their door or talk to them in person. I have been able to continue to use and to grow a really robust presence on Facebook. I have a discussion on policy there regarding unemployment rates, the discrepancy in Pennsylvania where we are 10% higher than the national average and almost 10% higher than New York, which has been the epicenter of the pandemic. And that was by far the most engagement that anything has gotten, I think, so far in this campaign. So Facebook's been a great medium for that. I also had, posts about education funding, other topics, and I'm going to continue to expand those and to continue on different topics. We've also taken advantage of my own and my family's 40 years of personal relationships with the voters here. We've been writing letters to old friends and to old neighbors, reaching out, giving them a call, mostly to check in on how they're doing, but, also to make sure that, they know what's going on and updates, obviously my updates in life are this campaign. So that's been effective as well.
Thank you. Rob, same question for you. What has your campaign done to transition to these unprecedented times of social distancing?
Yeah, it is a unique time to be running for office. We've used the opportunity, given that the reason that we can't be at doors is because we're going through this health crisis and now economic crisis. to, as we talk to folks, whether it's over the phone or over social media, on digital platforms, that we talk to them about how they're doing. And I think that's sincerely the way that the connection is made. So we've shifted a little bit from, the old approach of going to a door and introducing yourself and why you're running, and also using, existing networks to kind of further get out the name, to help care for the community in that way. And so we've also looked for opportunities to help. And as we help in those areas, conversations arise about what we're up to and what we're doing. And this is what we're doing, is we're running a campaign right now. So we've looked for opportunities to be genuine in that way. I think the mail is effective, digital presence certainly, although not all audiences are on digital, but you can reach audiences and boost posts and those sort of things. So for those who are interested in, running campaigns, this is an interesting year to be doing that, because we're looking at every possible way to work around the fact that we can't be in large audiences or going door to door. Hopefully we can do it soon, but it may be some time. Maybe the only other thing, not to give trade secrets or anything, but these Zoom calls are awesome. So we've done a number of meet and greets with family and friends and their networks using Zoom calls, and it's gone really well.
Thanks, Rob. Libby, same question to you. What has your campaign done to transition to these unprecedented times of social distancing?
Thank you, Natalie. Well, there's no doubt about it that my expertise is going door to door. In the school board election, everyone said that I absolutely knocked on more doors and talked with more people than any other candidate. And that was a help to me, because I can sit and explain my views and win votes from people that way. So this has certainly hurt me, because there isn't any door to door. The Zoom conferences, I've been on more Zoom conferences in the past month than ever in my life. It's also hurt my campaign in particular, because unlike certainly one of my younger counterparts, Facebook was not something that I ever used that much. So the one thing I do want to be clear about, though, is that I truly believe anything with our campaigns and challenges in the midst of this pandemic, it just fades very quickly compared to what our health workers are facing. There's many other people also, they're really on the front lines, and I thank them so much for the work that they're doing. Campaign progress and problems in campaigning at this time really fade in comparison. What's great for our country now, and what everybody should concentrate on, is everyone's health and safety. And again, I thank those people who are in the front line taking care of everyone.
Thank you. And Libby, this one will go to you first. Education has been one of the disrupted parts of life for families during this crisis. I know it's certainly been a disruption for our family. What should we learn from the closures of the Wolf administration's actions? And what would be your education priorities in office?
So, of all things asking about education, I have been greatly affected because not only do I have two college-age children who are now at home, because I believe about every school has closed. So now they're doing cyber school, as are the other school districts, not just colleges, but all the school districts have now turned into online learning. As a North Allegheny school director, I can assure you this has affected me greatly. Instead of preparing for this forum today, I've been working on all kinds of things affecting our school district. And I've really spent huge amounts of time on North Allegheny, and I would like to see the seniors have a graduation, have a senior prom, a lot of things that they're missing. And of course, the other valuable thing that everyone is missing is the direct interaction with teachers. So it's been quite a change and challenge, and the unsung heroes that we have are the teachers, the parents, the students. They are to be congratulated for taking this on and for still being able to teach our children. And even our students are doing great, because this some kids do go to cyber school, but a vast majority in the 28th are in your bricks and mortar schools. So this has been quite a change for everyone. And again, I thank our teachers, because they have really, really had to work to try to do online instruction. And we're all affected by this. And I'm truly praying that this pandemic ends. Education is still my top priority. That's why I became a school board director and was in so very many committees for our school district, even becoming a school director. Our children are our future, and education is the most important thing that we can give to them. So an ongoing issue is going to be pensions. Every school district is in trouble because a majority of our funds, not a majority, but we spend over $20 million in pensions. And so at the state, we're going to have to look at where can we find monies to make up for all of the lost monies during this pandemic. And we're going to have to take a hard look at those pensions. I have vowed to not take the legislators' pension. I hope that my cohorts will do the same, because I think as legislators, it starts with us, and we've got to make some cuts somewhere in order to make up some monies elsewhere. Lastly, I just want to thank the teachers again. They're the important factor we have here with the current online education. Thank you.
Thanks, Libby. Mike, education has been one of the disrupted parts of life for families during this crisis. What should we learn from the closures and the Wolf administration's actions? What would be your education priorities while in office?
Yeah, so first and foremost, I agree with Libby. I think, obviously, especially for parents, this has made everyone more grateful and recognizing what a huge asset our schools are to us, public and private, all of them having been closed by this, with parents now as involuntary homeschoolers without having an expectation of doing that. I think we all recognize what a great job our teachers do on a daily basis, and also what a great job they're doing in responding to this. I've seen my brother and his fiance, who teaches at Quaker Valley, I've seen their adjustments to teaching online and teaching remotely, which is something that, going into education, you never expect to be doing, certainly at a traditional public school. So, one of the things that came out of, I think, the response in some places that struck me was when Philadelphia initially said they forbid any school in their district from implementing distance learning, because even some of those schools had capabilities, but others didn't. And so they had to prioritize equity. And you hear that word a lot in the education discussion. And I think it's absolutely a great goal when it means we're lifting everyone up to a solid foundation and a good level. But, in this situation, it was really about bringing everyone down to the same level. Nobody can get ahead if everyone can't get ahead. And I think this is sort of exposed that is the position some people would take, is, that it's not, sure, building people up is great, but if that's not how it's possible, then we should level the playing field however we need to. And what that means for the 28th district and for North Allegheny and Penn Richland in particular as excellent, high-performing public schools, it just really reinforces what my priority would be, which is local control of schools. each of these two districts receives a very small portion of our operating budget from the state, 20%, compared to the statewide average of nearly 40%. And we need to keep the local taxes we raise, which pay for the vast majority of our schools, we need to keep that control local. And we need to push back against many voices, including Emily Skopov, who would push for more of the control of our funding to go to Harrisburg. Yeah, I've seen the pension impact that Libby's discussing. I agree with it. I disagree with her in that we can't not pay our pension obligations. That's a constitutional obligation of our state. It's also a moral obligation to people who have worked and paid into a system. But what we can do is we can pay it off in a more transparent way. I already have a proposal that would shift the payment of taxes from those local property taxes to the state level, which is where the pension issue was created under their administration in Harrisburg. It wasn't created by our school directors, but now they're the ones who carry half the blame because we've decided to route 50% of the payments through property tax. So I think that's an important approach. And I think it's also important to, make sure that we don't recreate this problem. We are in this pension crisis because we took some shortcuts from 2001 to 2010, and there were people who saw what it would do to the state, and their warnings were ignored. And we're facing a similar budget crisis now as we faced in 2008 and 2009. We need to make sure that those aren't one of the things that get cut, because we know, just given the way that pensions work, if we fall short on making 100% of our actuarially required payments in the next few years, it's going to mean much higher payments 5 or 10 years down the line. And so I want to commend you, Natalie, and the rest of the House Republican caucus in particular, who have been the driving force in getting us to 100% of the payments we need to make to get our pension fund solvent. And it's going to be a long challenge. We're nowhere close to the end of that tunnel, but we're at a position right now where we're in danger of repeating that same mistake. And I think we need to ensure that we don't do that for the sake of future Pennsylvanians.
Thanks, Mike. Rob, same question. Education has been one of the disrupted parts of life for families during this crisis. What should we learn from the closures and the Wolf administration's actions? What would be your education priorities while in office?
Thanks, Natalie. Yeah, we've had 3 kids at home during this close-in and shutdown doing remote work. I would commend right off the bat both of the school districts in our region, and also the parochial schools in the region as well, who've had to manage through a very difficult situation. And Libby, as a director, kudos to you as well for North Allegheny and handling the situation for the kids of the school district. Pine Richland, our kids go to, and they didn't miss a day of school. Literally the first day of the shutdown, they had a bridge plan in place, and our kids were at our dining room table working on their assignments while mom and dad were working remotely for our workplaces. So phenomenal job from both school districts in district. Although I will say that regionally, there's a lot of mismatch in terms of how things have gone. It hasn't been that high quality of a transition. Not that there hasn't been problems, and there still are things to work through. But across the region, some schools are just starting to go back, which is a testament to the strength of our school districts, the superintendents, the directors, and the teachers. The teachers and the parents collaborating, which in my view is the essential ingredient to any educated child, is the collaboration between a skilled and dedicated teacher and a competent, caring, loving parent who's engaged. And we have that in our district, but we need to keep the focus there on equipping students to focus on learning every day, and equipping families to reinforce at home as well. I think a couple of the things that we've learned through this crisis are the importance of the mobile environment, the importance of the remote and distance environment. A lot of sectors of the economy and industries have learned that as well, whether it's broadcasting church live on Sunday, or whether it's every single employee logging in remotely with their laptop to do their work. You name the industry, right? We just weren't as prepared as we should have been for that scenario. This is the scenario we're living with, and I don't think we will be unprepared next time, but we have to make sure that we are. And I think in a school setting, the importance of having the right technical equipment at home for every student is something that needs addressed immediately when we start the next school year. Is that over the summer, we need to make sure as a state legislative body that we're encouraging local schools to equip their kids, equip their students with the right equipment so that they can log in at home. I think in regards to pension reform, Mike and Libby hit on the issue. The only things that I would reinforce is that we all should know that the pension problem is a serious one, and it's the elephant in the room of any budget discussion. Over the last 5 years, over 70% of every dollar of increased money that went to schools or went to education went to pay for pensions. 70%, over 70% of every dollar that went to pay for increases in education went to pay pensions. And it's just inexcusable. So the answer that I have for that is growth. We need to grow our way out of the pension problem while also offering defined contribution plans, which we do offer now, but I think we need to encourage those. We need to be morally committed to paying our pension obligations. I agree with Mike on that. And as a legislator, I would commit to not taking the defined benefit plan as Libby did. I would take the 401k style or 403b style, which is what I have always had in the private sector as well.
Thanks, Rob. And we're going to do one final question here from the audience. I have a question from Anna. What sets you apart from the other candidates, and how does your experience make you qualified to hit the ground running as our state representative? Rob, I'm going to go to you first.
Thanks, Natalie, and thanks for the question, Anna. My experience and my credentials are what set me apart. I think, as you can see, Libby and Mike and myself all have educated views on the issues. We're all, highly invested in the area. We all care about conservative values. There's nuance in our views, but I think from my standpoint, where I sit, credentials and experience matter the most when we're talking about who's going to represent us in this district and who's going to face Emily Skopoff in November. I would submit to you that my experience as a West Point graduate, an MBA educated businessman, an experienced military veteran who's been under fire and has looked the enemy in the eye and taken decisive action. But it takes courage like that. It takes experience under fire like that to help us in the legislative body and get it done for the people of Pennsylvania. There's a reason that Speaker Turzai endorsed me, and it's because of those credentials, the background that I have, the experience that I have in bringing those leadership values to bear for every one of us. I think the other thing to note is that whether it's education or whether it's family issues or economy issues, experience as a small business person and experience as a family man with kids at home in school is relevant. And it's nothing against having raised kids, and it's nothing against being single, but I think that that's a factor that voters consider. Ms. Skopoff, that would be a difference to Ms. Skopoff as well, and something that that represents me well in this campaign. So in summary, I think it's my experience and credentials, and it's my status as a family man with kids at home.
Thanks, Rob. Libby, I'm going to go to you next. Same question. What sets you apart from the other candidates, and how does your experience make you qualified to hit the ground running as the next state representative?
Okay, thank you. I just want to mention one thing very quickly first. If there was any misunderstanding on the pensions, I was not saying at all and did not say that we would take away pensions from anyone. As a school director, I very much realize that they are due their pensions. So I want to make that very clear. Now to answer the question, I believe that what sets me apart is I know this district the best. I have lived here for 50 years and I have been more involved in more public service committees and activities than anyone else. I have been thoroughly involved in the 28th district. As for my background, I can assure you that neither Bucknell University nor Kenyon College are anything but highly selective, and my credentials stand for themselves. I am the only elected official running. I have been elected several times. I have made tough decisions. I stand behind my votes, and apparently the public stands behind me too, because they keep electing me and I had the most votes. So as the only person who is holding an elected office, I feel as though I am different from the others. And the other thing I'll mention is I also am a small business owner. I can relate to everyone. My husband and I do own a small business. Experience in the line of fire, I will tell you, I have, as an individual, saved quite a few lives. So I have been put in emergency situations, and I actually am a Red Cross instructor that teaches emergency response. I have been in these situations, I have saved lives, and I can assure you, when under fire, I am going to perform very well for our district. I think that there are a lot of things different about me. I actually think that I have knowledge of this district, not only having lived here, but being in all of the different community activities. I know this district. I care about this district. I've never left here. I have lived here forever. So I am going to do this in order to continue to make our community great. Thank you.
Thanks, Libby. Mike, same question for you. What sets you apart from the other candidates, and how does your experience make you qualified to hit the ground running as the next state representative?
Yeah, so we all recognize that this community is going to experience a real transition after November. Mike Turzai has been in leadership for the Republican caucus since January of 2007. And come January 2021, no matter how this race turns out, we will have a freshman legislator in the House, and we also have a freshman senator in Lindsey Williams. I believe I offer a unique opportunity for us to bridge this period where our community's voice in Harrisburg is going to be inevitably somewhat smaller than it has been. While I am from and continue to live in this community professionally, I've been working in the Capitol, much like representatives. And that gives me both a very deep policy background on some of the pressing issues in Pennsylvania, but it also gives me personal and professional relationships with every member of the Republican caucus, all of the staff members, and legislators across the aisle and across the rotunda in the Senate. I have experience actually writing and helping to pass legislation. I have a legal background with my law degree from Vanderbilt. So, in the direct work of really writing and passing legislation, I think my experience there stands alone. I agree with Anna, who asked the question, that especially in light of the COVID-19 crisis, we need a representative who's ready to hit the ground running. And our next official will not have any time to learn on the job. And so as the only candidate in the race with experience in the Capitol or even in public policy as a career more broadly, I think that that sets me apart and makes me the best candidate.
Thanks so much, Mike. It's about 10 to 9 right now, so we're going to move into the closing remarks. So I'll just ask each candidate to go ahead and make very brief closing remarks if you can, and then Meredith and I will wrap things up. I just want to thank everyone in advance for their questions. I'm sorry we couldn't get to all of them. There's some good questions in there, and I'm sure the candidates will be happy to speak with you offline if you did have a burning question for one of them in particular. So Libby, I'm going to start with you. I'm going to go in alphabetical order here for the closing remarks.
Thank you, Natalie. So some of the things that I think would make me a great candidate for the 28th district is living here for 50 years, knowing this district, being on the school board. I have been in charge of a very large budget. This year it's over $170 million. We need someone who can go through the budget, and especially at this time, we're going to have someone who can make cuts in the budget. I've been doing this for many years. I'm able to do this. I set policy with my fellow board members for our entire district, which does make up 82% of the 28th district here. So I've been making policy for a lot of years here already. I can assure you I am well aware of how to do that and have been doing that. While I haven't been doing it for the entire state, I have been doing it for over 80% of this district already. We make policy. We sometimes have to make reforms to old policies, and we have to look at a very large budget. We do have to make decisions for the district. I'm capable of doing all of these things. Budgeting is a huge part of it, and I've been doing budgeting for most of my life, not just in my household, but from everything from being the PTO president to the NA Foundation to being on the school board. I am constantly looking at budgets. I'm the current legislative chair for the A.W. Beatty Career Center, and I'm quite used to looking at all of the legislative policies and reporting on those and know those areas also. I care about this district. I've never left. I hold it dear to my heart. I care about everybody in this district. And I'm a person who's a lifelong Republican and going to hold our Republican values close to my heart. When I make decisions, I'm not afraid to stand up for what's right. People have seen my votes on things. Sometimes it is a 1 to 8 vote, and I'm the one, but I'm not beholden to anyone. I vote how I see it, and a lot of times I've been proven to be right, even when at first I was the sole vote that way. I think it's important to have someone who is able to vote properly without any pressures, and I've been put under great pressure for years now, and I still make the correct vote. That's what we want in Harrisburg. I'm going to do that if I'm elected. I will be in Harrisburg making the proper votes, and I am not beholden to anyone. I will do the right thing. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Libby. Mike, could you give us your closing remarks, please?
Sure. So I think I've covered a lot about my personal background and what sets me apart. So I do want to touch on one issue in closing that hasn't come up tonight that I think is important for a lot of us, and it's pro-life priorities in Pennsylvania. I think I was happy to see that all three of us were rated highly by the Pennsylvania Pro-Life Association. I think it's important to continue to have a pro-life voice in this seat to follow in Mike Turzai's footsteps. One of the things I would highlight, two things I would highlight there. One is that being in Harrisburg, I can really see where the front lines of that battle are. And one thing I don't think is well known or widely known is that a year from now, we could have publicly funded abortions in Pennsylvania. And it wouldn't take any vote from a House member or a Senate member to do that. There's a lawsuit currently in Commonwealth Court that's asking our very partisan Pennsylvania Supreme Court to mandate publicly funded abortions. It's happened in 9 other states, and it's something we probably have to get ready to fight here. And so one of my first actions as state representative would be to introduce a constitutional amendment to reverse that decision or to head it off if it hasn't yet happened. To build on that, just for my personal background, I think we all are pro-life, but I would say we often have in those pro-life discussions in Harrisburg, there's an attitude that pro-life men in particular need to keep their voices restrained on it because it doesn't affect us is the charge. As a quadruplet, I know that, I was born and my brothers were born because of my parents' commitment to their pro-life values and to their willingness to put their health and their lives on the line to give us a shot at life that we deserved. And I feel a commitment to other children in that position that it shouldn't depend on who their parents are and whether their parents are of the same beliefs, that they deserve the same shot at life. And so when we talk about pushing pro-life legislation in Harrisburg, I think we both have to be able to identify the most important fronts in that battle, especially the funding front, and also that we need people who can really speak to the issue on a personal level in a way that can drive the legislation and the public discussion. And I hope to be that candidate.
Thanks, Mike. Rob, your closing remarks?
Yeah, just want to say thanks everybody for coming out tonight. Appreciate all the robust support and participation from the Young Republicans of Allegheny County. Natalie, thank you so much for being here and taking time to moderate this evening. And what a privilege for me to be here with these other fine candidates kind of on stage over Zoom, talking to each of you, who many of you will be voting on or before June 2nd, either by mail or at the polling places. And it's just a privilege to be here. And I want to just kind of close with a little story from my military days. When I was deployed to Iraq the second time, my assignment with my team was to help coach a group of Iraqi soldiers to learn tactics to be able to conduct intelligence operations. And every day I had to walk up a set of stairs on the outside of a building. It was the only two-story building in Sadia, Iraq. And around the door frame at the top where I would go in to work every day was riddled with bullet holes. And I would duck my head under there. I would go up there as fast as I could and go into work and talk with my Iraqi counterpart. And it turns out he was working for the other side, which we were able to root him out and take care of him. But the reason that I tell that story is how lucky are we to be in a safe community like District 28, where men and women are fighting for us on the front lines. And now the front lines are in the hospitals and the essential services. But we have a safe community, a beautiful place to live. My wife and I could have lived anywhere in the country after serving our time in the military. We chose to come home to District 28 and raise our family here because it's world class. We're excited to keep it that way. And I believe that my background and credentials have prepared me for this role and for such a time as this. So I'd appreciate your consideration and vote. My platform is life, freedom, and economic growth. And I believe that life is the foundational issue. Our freedom is what we cherish and protect. And we have the greatest economy in the world, and our capitalist system has to be protected. And it will be under fire in November. So we all have to join together and volunteer and push together to make sure that we retain Republican leadership and expand that Republican leadership in our state legislature. So thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Rob. I want to thank the candidates. I want to thank the YRs for putting this all together. I don't even think I knew what Zoom was a month ago. And I think Libby said it before. She's done more of these in the last month in her life. Same here. I think this is a really unique way to connect with some good Republicans tonight. Certainly a Friday evening well spent. So thank you everyone for participating, and thank you for having me. I learned a lot about 3 really good candidates tonight, and I'd be happy to work with any one of you in Harrisburg. I wish you all the best of luck in these very trying times. I can't imagine being a first-time candidate in the wake of COVID-19. So I know it's difficult. If any of you need anything, please feel free to reach out to me. Meredith, I don't know if you have any last remarks to say. I'll
Yes.
turn it over to you.
Yeah, just a couple things. Thanks everyone for participating. I know we'd rather be out, talking in public to voters and knocking on doors like YRs do best, but this is what we have for now. I forgot to announce earlier that tomorrow is a day of action. The PAYRs and Trump Victory are making tomorrow a day of action on phones. So if you are interested, send us a message on Facebook, email us, put a message in the chat now. Alex Ganton is the Trump Victory staffer for the county, and he can help get you a login, go over the training, because if you've never done it, it's worth to kind of just get training to familiarize yourself with the process. But we need to really get out and make more calls than the left. They are out there spreading their false rhetoric, and we need to be out there, sharing the positive things that the president is doing and our local elected officials. So please participate tomorrow. It does not take, you can spend 5 minutes on it from the comfort of your home, as long as you're using the app. Thank you so much for participating, and please let us know if you have questions about tonight. If there's something that you'd like to get to the candidates, that's a question, please send it our way. And then if you have suggestions for future events, hopefully we're not in this order for much longer, but we will continue to do things like this. So if you have suggestions, please let us know. And with that, thank you everyone, and it's 9:02, so we did a great job on timing. So thank you, candidates and participants. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.